London Market Forums, bringing insurance professionals together.
Obviously, the theme for today is more about digital disruption and the impact on the workforce. The HR Tech Partnership, we do two things. One is we run an angel investment fund that invests in AI-based or leading-edge technology-based workplace or employee startups. And the other thing that we do is we run a human capital digital innovation hub. It's a bit of a mouthful, sounds a bit high-powered, but it's quite simple really, and I'll talk about that a little more. And just to complete, these are some of the current fund investors. These are all FTSE 100 Group HRDs or non-exec directors. And they've invested their personal money because I think they all understand that the workplace is changing very rapidly. Organizations are still quite slow to react, but they want to be in the forefront and keep abreast of what's happening. Just a little bit about myself. My primary experience has been in large, complex businesses. So I've worked as Group HR Director or Global HR Director in businesses such as Citibank, AT&T. Just remember, given this is a group of insurers, I've also worked briefly for AXA. Probably didn't enjoy it as much as some of the other businesses I worked for. But I've also been very international. So I've lived in China, I've lived in Singapore, in the US, and of course traveled a lot across Europe. And right now I'm managing partner of the HR Tech Partnership. Right, so today I think we are going to really cover very quickly cover three kind of questions. Firstly, why is the future of work important? I think all of us hear about innovation, digital, and we are focused on the business, but a big part of that is really your workforce. And so some quick insights as to why is it going to be important for you to keep a close eye on this aspect. The second one is a few examples of how digital is impacting the workplace. And I guess finally, a little bit about what skills will future leaders need. And again, we're talking about a quick snapshot view here. Okay, so I guess this sounds a bit of a cliche, but it is really very true that a lot of things are getting very fluid and uncertain. So let's look at a couple of things. Now, PA Consulting did some research, and they found that the percentage of jobs in 10 years' time that are going to exist, and those are jobs we've not even thought about. So these are completely new kinds of jobs with skill sets or competencies that it's difficult to imagine. What percentage do you think of jobs will exist in 10 years' time that don't exist today? So hands up for anyone who thinks it's about 25%. Okay. Anyone who thinks it's 50%? Anyone who thinks it's more than that? Okay, that's great. So I think we have, so according to PA, 65% of the jobs that will exist in 10 years' time don't even exist right now. So I think that's one way to think how the future workplace is going to start looking very different, and the kind of skills that all of us in this room are going to need if we want to continue working, we will need to think about. Let's look at something else. I mean, the millennials and the mindset, again, is not a new concept. We all know, we've been hearing about millennial mindsets. And one of the, I guess, things that millennials or the younger generation is known for is what they look for in work today is very different. And more importantly, this whole concept of being with one employer is no longer true. I mean, that has not been true for quite some time. If I look, I mean, I worked for 8 different organizations during my 30-year career. But today's younger generation is beginning to think even more differently. So, and there is research that says that they will be looking to change jobs every 2 to 3 years. So what proportion of millennials do you think are actually going to be actively doing this? Which means that on an average, everyone would have about 15 to 20 employers during their lifetime. Let's start again with 25%, 50%, okay, 75%, okay. Anyone who thinks it's more than 75%? Wow, okay. So I think we have a lot of people who understand, but it's 91%. And so again, if you are looking at, if you are thinking about the workforce, if you are either a business leader or a line manager, the way you need to think, I mean, first it starts with attracting. How do you attract people who have no intention of staying beyond 2 years? How do you retain them? How do you do your career planning? How do you look at development? All those things are going to look very different as we go forward. And that's the kind of thinking and planning that organizations have to start doing far more than they're doing right now. Okay, just another quick thing. I mean, I guess all of us know that learning is going to be increasingly important, and it is a core value that a lot of employees look for when they join an organization. But the reality is 91% of them like to learn at their own pace. And yet today's organization, it's a very top-down approach to learning and training that we have. I mean, bring everyone in a room, X time to Y time. Now, as an organization, if you continue doing that, the risk is, A, you won't have employees who really want to be with you, but also their engagement is going to be so low that your learning and training effectiveness is not going to really be very high. So just there's a lot more to this. I just wanted to give you a flavor to say the workforce changing is not just a cliche. It is happening, and I guess getting prepared for it is going to be a key role for anyone who leads or manages a team. So I guess switching gears then, 3 key trends are changing the workplace. The first is business models are changing. And I guess a very, very common example that you're familiar with is Uber. Now, a taxi service 5 years ago was a very different concept. If you ran a taxi company, it was about owning the fleet of cars. It was the employee relations aspect of the drivers, et cetera, et cetera. Today, Uber is all about technology. And I guess financial services is going to be no different. Fintech is already changing things so rapidly. So right from banking to payment services, and the same is happening with insurance, and which is why I guess we have all of you coming here and wanting to understand more. But as business models change, I think your workplace, the skills you need could look very different dramatically. So it's going to be very important to understand what is your business model going to be over the next few years, and that could have a very profound impact on your workplace, employee skill set, and how you manage people. I think the other 2 factors that are important is the second one is the gig economy, and again, the concept of people working for shorter periods of time as contractors is not new. We've had contractors for quite some time. But I think the speed with which a lot of people are now opting to be gig workers, which means they actively don't want permanent employment. At a time, you could have them working for 3 different business companies because of this particular skill set they have. And it's definitely going to happen with people whose skill sets are going to be scarce. And digital skills is a big part of that. So the gig economy means, again, your workforce is going to look quite different. That, with the impact of robots and automation, indicates in 5 years' time, having a workforce, you have probably not more than 1/3 of your employees is permanent, and 1/3 could easily be gig workers, and the balance 1/3 could be machines, is a very, very doable, or it's a very, the possibility is very high. And again, how do you manage a workforce like this, which is very different to what your traditional workforce has been? And the last factor, is really expectations of employee experience. We all are getting very used to being treated as consumers. So ordering things online, getting instant feedback, making sure that things are personalized, because there's a lot more machine learning that's happening around consumer sites. A simple thing like watching a movie, and how many of you watch Netflix? Okay, and I think the great thing about Netflix is once it figures out what you like, it suggests things, it brings things to you, and that's the mindset that we all are getting used to. And yet, the moment we step inside an organization, I think it's still so traditional. We call them human resources, but actually there's very little human part of it. People are treated as almost standard entities, and there's very little of a personalized approach. And yet, I think employees are expecting more of that. So organizations that manage to crack this and are focused on improving and enhancing the employee experience are the ones who will be far more competitive in attracting talent and in retaining talent. So again, a thing to think about, which probably didn't matter as much a few years ago. And the interesting thing is all these three are happening at a speed which again hasn't happened primarily because of technology. So the common theme here is technology is changing business models. Technology is making it possible for virtual working, gig working in a very different way. And technology is enhancing the employee experience. And which is why I think it is important to understand the impact of digital on the workplace. So let's look at a few models of how is digital impacting the workplace. I think the first model that, before, I guess just to help put things in context, I think the first big change at the workplace happened when the internet started getting used. And so things like email or getting connected, having connectivity, communication channels, that was, I guess, the thing that probably was quite different to how things had happened earlier. The second wave has happened about 10 years ago, primarily through mobile. And so today reaching out to employees, particularly recruitment, but using the mobile far more is another big trend. And then the third wave that's happening now is really artificial intelligence. Now, AI sounds new and it sounds threatening, but the reality is it's been around for quite some time. The big thing is because you can't see it, its impact, we fail to recognize the impact it's making. But of course, I think all of us use Google. Alexa, how many Alexa users in here? Great, so 3/4 of the room. And all that is possible because of machine learning. So the translation of that to your workplace and to your employees is far more than probably people realize. And some of the ways in which AI is impacting the workplace is substitution. And I know we are going to be talking about RPA much more later on. But really, whether it's robots, whether it is machines, workers on the shop floor, or whether it's also in offices and back-end processing, automation is impacting and is taking over human jobs in a big way.